Bartender's helper? I heard a ringing soft bell that let me know I was needed at the door. It was a Friday night and we had a large crowd. I caught the bartender's eye and pointed to the door. It was probably an invited guest who had arrived late. I would check to see if they were on the list, let them into the lobby, and have a member escort them in. No one was allowed in without a member escorting them. If they weren't on the list, I would get confirmation before they could enter. Standing in the doorway were two men about my age, just under 30. Even if they had been invited, they wouldn't have been let in because they were dressed in jeans and t-shirts. Jeans were not allowed, only collared shirts and pants. You never knew for sure who was who, though. One of our wealthiest members owned 2 construction companies, one of which specialized in laying water pipes. He would show up head to toe covered in mud, slip into the locker room, shower, and put on the clothes he kept there before heading to the bar. "Good evening, gentlemen. Is there anything I can help you with?" I asked politely. "We need to speak to Jerry Stone. Bring him to the door." I didn't like his attitude, but he asked me. Maybe they were looking for a job and we were in the middle of improving the golf course. I held out my hand. "It's me. I'm Jerry Stone. And you're—" That's all I had time to say before the taller man caught me off guard with a right hook. Before I could react, the shorter, heavier man hit me, knocking me to the ground. Have you ever noticed that you think the strangest things while under pressure? I thought about how far I'd come from the biker bars I'd started out in, where I perceived everyone as a threat, to the country club I now worked at with its politeness and sophistication. They put me down, and quite well when I got lucky. The chief of police of our small town and the assistant district attorney, himself an ex-cop, had just walked in. The chief let out a yell and they pushed them off of me. I went into a frenzy, ready to do anything. But by then the chief had them both under the small revolver he always carried, which was required for his job. His service weapon was a Glock, but he didn't think it was a good idea to advertise that he was armed. So he kept a revolver in his pocket, a Smith & Wesson .327. I've fired one, and for their size, they're pretty damn good. "What the hell is wrong with you guys?" I was almost yelling. "Who the hell are you guys?" "You know who we are, motherfucker. We're the husbands of the 2 wives you slept with." Now I was really pissed. "Look, Dib, idiots. I've never seen you or your wives before, to my knowledge. I don't date married women. It leads to stupid things like this happening." The ADA smirked. "Thanks for sparing our delicate ears, Jerry. But these guys really are jerks. You want to press assault charges? I could find some pretty good witnesses." I took a look at them. They both looked like they were about to shit their pants thinking about what might happen. The chief smirked. "Yeah. Aggravated assault, trespassing. That would be true because they specifically came here to hurt you. We could probably figure out something else if we think about it." The shorter one looked genuinely scared. The taller one still looked pissed off. "We wouldn't be here if that asshole hadn't used our wives. It's his fault." "You make it very tempting to press charges. What makes you think I'm using your wives? I'll give you one chance to tell your story, but not here in front of the members." I turned to the chief and the ADA. "Will you be escorting our guests here to the office? I'd really like to straighten things out." I turned to them. "You wouldn't mind giving us a few minutes of your time, would you? I'd like to settle this now before you decide to hide in the dark and wait for me." The tone of my voice let them know it wasn't a request. The chief made them give him their papers first, and then we entered my office. "Speak. Why do you think I'm the one fooling around with your spouses?" "Because those stupid fools told us," growled the tall one. "In those exact words, Jerry Stone is having sex with me?" The short one spoke up. "Yes, pretty much, even told us where you are." "Really? At any rate, can you get them to come and check it out?" "Damn right they did. Those dumb asses are waiting for us in the car." They described the car, and the ADA went outside and invited them in. They timidly entered. One had a pretty good bruise on her cheek. The other had bruises on her arms. It looked like someone had squeezed her too hard. They weren't ugly or pretty, just average. If they weren't bruised and scared to death, they could have been much prettier. One looked around, confused. "Ladies, do I know you?" I asked softly, trying to reassure them. "I've never seen you before, mister. Where's Jerry?" This man said he was here, she said, pointing at the lawyer. What about you? I asked the other one. Do I look familiar to you? No, what the hell is going on here? I pulled out my wallet and showed her my license. Are you Jerry Stone? There's two of you here. Sorry, ladies, I'm the only one here by that name. The men started to look even more pissed off. The tall one, obviously the smartest in the bunch, barked at his wife. Fool, you better not lie to me. Obviously, he was trying to talk himself into jail. I swear I don't know this guy, his wife wailed. The chief had heard enough. Boys, apologize to this man and promise him he'll never see you again, and he may not press charges. I have your ID. I think I'll call Sheriff Costner, let him know about your little adventure. He pulled out his cell phone, took some pictures of the bruises. I'm sure he'll come by tomorrow, check on these ladies. If he finds any more bruises, he won't be a happy man. His mother was beaten by his father, and he doesn't have much tolerance for that sort of thing. Make up or spend the night away from each other. Understand? They nodded, looking ashamed. I let them go. It wasn't worth the hassle of going to court. After warning them that I wouldn't be so lenient if I saw them again, I let them go. We walked them to the door, and I wondered how women could be seduced by the same guy. Either he had a line of shit a mile long, or they were really dumb. I suspected a mixture of both. Just as we entered the lobby, a man walked in and headed toward the bar. He barely noticed us, but one of the women stopped. Jerry? He looked back and turned pale. Both girls shouted his, my name. He turned and ran out the door. Men, women, and the chief rushed after him. The ADA looked at me and smirked. Mystery solved, huh? I just sighed, walked back to the bar, and made a phone call. I never wanted to be a bartender, it just happened. My parents had 6 kids. Mom stayed home to raise us, and Dad worked every hour he could at the paper mill. There wasn't much left over for school, and not a dime left over for higher education. My uncle had a grill bar, a real shithole, but he poured a fair drink. The kitchen was clean, and the food was good and reasonably priced. He gave me my first job, serving tables and washing dishes. I went from that to being a short-order cook, and when I got older, I started working at the bar. Along the way, I took classes on all sorts of subjects, like how to recognize trouble. It wasn't likely to be any rowdy ones that started raging. It was the quiet ones you had to watch out for. Something would upset them and they'd be left alone, going into drink and think mode, as my uncle liked to say. Then they would get the magic drink and explode. I learned that in my county, if someone started trouble, you didn't call the police. You handled it yourself. Call them too often, and they will shut you down for being a nuisance. Also, when you are working, there is no such thing as a fair fight. You want to minimize your impact on the crowd before they decide to join you, so you attack them hard and fast and hurt them. Do that once or twice, and they learn to behave. I had a few bumps and bruises, so I learned how to fight, rough and tumbling at first, but I got tired of getting hit, so I took some lessons. I didn't need a belt. I just wanted to be able to defend myself. When I was in my 20s, my uncle shot a guy who stabbed him. He didn't go to jail, but the church ladies revolted, and he had to shut down his establishment. Over the years, I worked at better places, went to school part-time, even took bartending classes and tried to keep a nonchalant face long enough to get certified. I'm almost done with my last year of school, soon to have a degree in hospitality management. I've been in this job for 3 years, working my way up from bartender to assistant manager. I was also in charge of the restaurant. I worked hard for 10 to 12 hours a day, but I never complained. I hope to be the general manager of the club in a few years, and at a place like the Briarwood Country Club that came with an almost 6-figure salary. I was able to work that much because I didn't have much of a personal life. I was never married. The divorce rate today is astronomical, one of the highest in the country per profession. I was serious about one girl, and she made a habit of coming over while I was working so we could spend my breaks together. She was young, bored, beautiful, and wolves surrounded her, coaxing and feeding her alcohol until one night she disappeared. I went outside and found her in the back seat of some asshole's car, panties hanging off her ankle. I beat the shit out of him, dumped her, and went to work at a better place. She tried to apologize, and I truly believed it. But the damage was done. My uncle felt a little sorry for me, but he laughed. What did you expect? Letting her hang around was like taking your prize chicken to a weasel convention. One universal truth I would learn in this profession: there's always someone looking to take advantage of a bartender, from socialites to barflies to ditzes. It didn't take me long to realize it was workplace suicide. If you pissed off the right husband or boyfriend, wife or daughter, you were out the door. I learned to determine balance by flirting lightly with wives and girlfriends while keeping my distance. And I never once came close to crossing the line, either to an implied offer or a direct offer. It was quite difficult at times. The ladies had their own cards to play, and in fact, they were here much more often than their men who worked to maintain their lifestyle. The advantage was that they learned they could trust me, so they often asked my opinion on various things. This was especially valuable if they wanted my opinion on gifts, since I also knew their husbands, and men often talk about things they don't think their wives would be interested in. I had an advantage. One husband loved fishing, so his wife surprised him with a fishing trip to a luxury mountain resort where he could fish for trout during the day while she sunbathed by the pool, shopped, and visited the spa. And in the evenings, they enjoyed each other, courtesy of my business colleague. I had a friend who serviced the bar at the club, and I let him know that I would appreciate it if he took good care of them. He was happy to agree, knowing he would ask for a favor someday. I did the same for the men. Pretty soon they realized this and told me directly what they would like so I could give it to my spouse. Some of them were unusual, but most were simple. One day, one wife asked me if she could trust me. In almost anything that isn't too immoral or illegal, a good bartender can keep a secret better than a priest. That satisfied her, and she told me about a sexual fantasy she wanted to play out with her husband. Turns out she was fascinated by being tied to the bed, giving her husband free access to do whatever he wanted to her. She wanted to try it, but was afraid to tell her husband. It took some time to get it to the point, and a little help from my lingerie contact for proper equipment. She dressed her, tied her to the bed in the hotel room she rented, and left just before he arrived. I had a key card. I stopped him for one drink. "You've had enough to drink, Mr. Reynolds. Your wife wants you to follow these instructions exactly. She wants you to be open and understanding and give her this birthday present. Enjoy your evening, sir." I hadn't seen them for 3 weeks and was worried I had pushed a member away when she walked in, glowing, wearing a necklace with a large diamond in the middle. She told her friends that she had gotten it for her birthday. Later, she caught me alone. "You know that's my collar, right? All of this is fun, of course, but I can never thank you enough, and my husband wanted you to have this as a token of appreciation." $500 wrapped in very small, very wet panties. She giggled. "I wrapped them myself. Make sure we have the most intimate table tonight, okay, honey?" I seriously thanked her for the tip later, after he'd been at the table for half an hour, and his wife was practically dancing in her seat. He grinned, reached out to his wife, and she licked his fingers while he thanked me for the favor. 2 months later, I was promoted to assistant manager. He was the main sponsor. Every bartender worth anything has a reputation. It takes years to make a good one, but once you do, it's worth its weight in gold. If asked, I can give you the name of the best mechanic or plumber in town, a humble doctor or divorce attorney, and talk them into doing you the favor you need. A friend of mine, a lingerie salesman, was involved in this as well as bartenders in 3 states. I also had an understanding with a bookie and several escort agencies. Again, there was a fine line to walk. If a guy had a gambling problem and it caused problems with his wife or financial difficulties, guess who was to blame? Same with the chaperones if the wife got wind of it, so long job. That's why I bet the safeties. The bookie would only let a guy place 2 unauthorized bets at a time, and the women were very careful. It didn't help any of their businesses to get unwanted publicity. None of these people gave me money. I didn't gamble, and I could pretty much get laid any time I wanted for free. But if I needed a favor, they were there for me. Most of the time, I tried to refer them to other members if they were in the right area. Many of our members owned their own companies, and it was a quid pro quo type arrangement. I got the idea from a friend. His wife hated soccer as she was sure she and her friends had something to keep them entertained. We always had a large group. We rented the biggest TV we could find, set up the ballroom as a temporary bar. I had the kitchen prepare large plates of appetizers to help consume the alcohol. Even then, many wives and girlfriends end up coming over to take them home. I talked to a few key women, introduced them to my lingerie specialist, and off they went to the races. While the men watched soccer, the women sat in a small conference room where they were treated to the latest lingerie fashions, the latest toys. I even had a couple other friends, one a hairstylist, one a makeup artist. They picked 3 women at random of different sizes, facial features, and ages, and gave them a full makeover, and then brought them out complete with lingerie to emphasize their shape and age. The kitchen served more gourmet appetizers, and I had another friend, the wife of a local winemaker, supply the wines. It was a resounding success. The men actually had to serve the women after the game. We kept our ears open and had 3 cabs at the ready. The women insisted that I come at the end of the night to thank me. As they left, the 4 of them, giggling, waited until they were last. "We love Aubrey," one of them exclaimed. "She has the cutest things." Look. She opened her coat, revealing a French maid's uniform, much to her flattery. The next had a PVC nurse's uniform. The next had an almost transparent teddy bear, and the last had a very pretty lavender-colored garter and nothing else. It was all unexpected, and I blushed at the end, which they found adorable. It became a regular occurrence to the point where we had to move it to a larger room. I went to college online when I could, actually attending classes on Wednesday mornings and Thursday evenings. I made a few friends, but I didn't have time to make relationships. There was one woman I really liked. We had an accounting class together on Wednesday and a business class on Thursday. We would sometimes meet at the library and study together. She was a little older than me, 31 years old. I could tell she was rich. You could tell by her clothes, her jewelry, her car. But she was nice to everyone, even went out for pizza and beer with us sometimes. She paid her fair share and never flaunted her wealth. Her smile could melt ice caps, sweet and caring one second, devilish and flirtatious the next. And she was hot as hell, knew it, but never insisted on it. She neatly blew off college guys if they hit on her, then they got a taste of that fool. I thought she'd make a damn good bartender. I was walking out of the library one night as it was closing and saw her sitting on a bench with her shoulders slumped. I went over to say hello and she looked up, tears still streaming down her cheeks. Not tears of physical pain, but raw emotion. "Do you mind if I sit down?" She nodded, fumbling in her purse for a tissue. I always carried a handkerchief with me, inherited from my uncle. He might be in jeans and a tattered t-shirt, but his monogrammed handkerchief was always clean and available. I gave her mine. "Who carries handkerchiefs around with them now?" she said, wiping her cheeks. "Only gentlemen of the old school, in case they find an unfortunate girl in need." That made her smile. She tried to give it back, but I told her to hold it. She sat twirling it in her hands. "Do you want to talk about it?" Aside from handkerchiefs, I have rather soft shoulders and very large ears. No personal agenda, I promise. She actually giggled before frowning again. "I think you're the only man I've ever seen that I actually believe when you say that. And yes, I'd like to talk, it might help. But not here. Would you buy a sad girl a cup of coffee?" I immediately knew what she was talking about, a little mom-and-pop place near campus. It was clean, cheap, and close, making it popular with college students. The owners were respected for being known for their intolerance of drunks and screamers. It was quiet, with widely spaced booths. If it was late and they didn't need a table, they let you sit and study. We walked over, got coffee, a piece of pie, apple for me, cherry for her. She took a few sips, ate half the pie, leaned back in her chair and sighed. "You know I'm married, right?" I nodded. Only a blind man could miss the ring on her finger. 7 years. I really loved him, you know. I thought I had a forever man who would live happily ever after. I guess not. "How long has he been cheating on you?" She seemed surprised by my candor. "How do you know? And what makes you think it was him?" I shrugged. "Easy. In my line of work, you can usually tell the good people from the bad, and you're definitely one of the good ones. You seem to have money, so I don't think that's a problem. You don't have bruises, and you're not mentally abused, so it must be a scam. Why do I think it's not you? Because if it was, you wouldn't be sitting on a bench in the dark crying. You'd be living a wild life. so it has to be him. The end.